Welcome to another episode of the Individuation Podcast. This is the IFC's Individuation Podcast. I am Dr. Wahab El Samurai. With me today is Lisa Hong and Dr. Eric Tomlinson. And we are here today to discuss the symbol of the mountain. What is the mountain? So without further ado, I'm going to let the gang introduce or talk about whatever they want. And then we will get into the nitty gritty. Okay, Lisa, take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you two smiling faces. It's been a little while for me, so it's really nice to see you, Dr. Lahab and Dr. Eric.
And hello to our wonderful listeners.
To all of our wonderful listeners.
We're very honored to have you here.
We don't have you physically here, but we're honored anyway. It's okay. Mm-hmm. So, Inception last week. How did we feel about Inception last week?
Cool story.
Right? Wasn't it fantastic?
That was really fun.
Yes, yes. I think we enjoyed it. I think we should do Tenet by John David Washington.
Oh, I haven't seen that, but I love taking these modern stories and breaking them down.
And this is like Kenneth Branagh is in it, and John David Washington is in it. He plays lead role, and they play past, present, and future.
Oh,
so they go back through time. So we will have many things to talk about. So next week, everybody, please watch Tenet. Stars John David Washington. It is currently running on HBO Max, probably on something else too. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the mountain. Eric, what would you like to say about the mountain?
Well, I'd like to give a brief little introduction on this story. I was thrilled to see it because...
Is this the one about you going to the highest mountaintop?
Yes.
I told you not to tell that story.
The one that you tried to, yeah, the one that you tried to throw me off of.
Oh, that one. Okay, yes. Yeah. Tell that story. I love that story.
Yeah, I thought you'd remember that.
Okay. I enjoy that story. Please, go ahead.
Yes, you enjoyed it quite a bit. I heard you laughing all the way down.
I told you I enjoy that story. Please, go ahead.
Yes. Anyway, one of my areas of specialty was and is ancient civilizations, and I just love them. The ancient cultures. I'd rather say ancient cultures than civilization. And this is one by the Aztecs, and which I'm fascinated by this culture. Some experts have called them psychotic cannibals, which of course they weren't. But that's kind of like people read a chapter in their psychology class on Freud, and they go, "Oh, Freud, he's just a sex freak. He's a sex addict," and you know, it's that kind of thing.
This is debatable, but okay.
Well, very debatable.
He could have.
Could have been.
He was sleeping with everybody and their mother.
But that's hugely missing the point of his genius.
Yes.
Hugely missing the point.
Absolutely.
Even though I'm not a follower.
It's not just libidinal. It was.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, the Middle America and actually the Middle East, the Mesopotamian Valley, those are my favorite, as well as the Far East. And this one is fascinating because for about well over 1,000 years in Middle America, we had the Mayans, the Toltecs, and then the Aztecs from about 1300 to about 1521, when Hernando Cortez came over and wiped them out. The Aztecs lived on a lake called Lake Texcoco. It's about, gosh, let me see, I wrote it down, 75 miles long. Think about the size of this lake. 75 miles long and 12 miles wide on average.
Wow.
And that's where they built their city that is present day Mexico City. Their capital was Tenochtitlan, present day Mexico City, had a population of somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000. Some people say as much as 500,000. They were all city states. governed like a city-state would be. There were 3 or 4 other major cities that had a population of 100,000 each. People don't realize how big this empire was. A total of about 5 or 6 million people in the entire empire. They have records of up to maybe 50,000 people a day visited this city on the middle of this lake. Their 2 main gods, Quetzalcoatl, that's the image that most people see if they look up the Aztecs. That's the feathered serpent, half bird, half serpent. It was the god of the upper crust, the elite, the priesthood. The other god, which we'll read about in the story, and this is a tough one for me to say, Huitzilopochtli, he's the tribal god of the people. His symbol was the hummingbird. Hummingbirds were very big in their culture. Let me tell you some of the things to show how unbarbaric these people were. This is the same period of time when Europe was just coming out of the Dark Ages and most people couldn't even read and write because the church would not allow them to. And here's the things that they excelled in.
Now they run all the universities.
Sculpture, poetry, music, elaborate feather work, aqueducts, writing, painting, botany, zoology, irrigation, beautiful jewelry, calendars, arts and crafts, ceramics, cotton, even sports. And get this, they had compulsory education. You didn't have a choice but to be educated. How's that for 1200?
Interesting.
The crops, the food, corn, beef, squash, chilies, tomatoes, and people were saying, oh, well, they did human sacrifice because they were cannibals. Not true. They ate turkeys, frogs, rabbits, ducks, iguanas, birds, gophers, dogs, deer, and insect larvae. They had plenty of protein. They were also very efficient. They used human waste to fertilize their tens of thousands of acres of crops. And when you've got 5 or 6 million people, that's a lot of poop. The common drink was pulque, which is, as you would guess, like in every culture, it's alcoholic, fermented from the maguey plant. Now the elite, they prided themselves in not drinking alcohol. They drank, guess what? Chocolate. Chocolate mixed with chilies and honey. Montezuma is said to have drank from 30 to 50 cups a day. Now that's not where the term Montezuma revenge came from, but I guarantee you he had some Montezuma revenge after 50 cups of chocolate.
Okay.
Now get this, women could own property. They could also inherit. Unbelievable in the 1200s. Women could be traders, artisans, all kinds of merchants. They could even be doctors and priests, which were the highest people. Women were, I mean, it was incredible at the power of women in this culture. They also, and get this, tell me this, they weren't ahead of their time on this. They even accepted a third gender they called muhi, which is basically a trans cross-dresser. And that was an acceptable gender in their culture.
That's where we're trying to reach now.
Yeah, and
they had already been there.
1200 AD. The major animals to them, jaguar, eagle, and snake. And I can't wait to hear you.
Because we're trying to recycle everything. We're trying to use our poop for something more useful.
Yes.
Yes.
And I can't wait to hear you talk about this, Lahab. Their major cultural vision was an eagle eating a snake. And somebody saw that on the lake, and they said, that's where we're building our city. And they didn't just build it on the mountains. They also had thick mats that you could walk on of straw and branches, and covering acres and acres and acres of that lake that they grew crops on. Here's what I like. Here's what fascinates me about Montezuma. He was obsessed with the spiritual nature beyond himself. He was obsessed with it. His whole goal was to unite his material world with the spiritual world. That was the motive behind everything they did and everything he stood for. They used symbols and dreams and all kinds of things like that. He was kind of Jungian in a way, just in that area. Now, the downside, they did have slavery, but their slavery was for punishment and captivity only. Women could own slaves. Now, slaves could not be mistreated. They could not be sold without their agreement to be sold. They could volunteer for slavery to pay off their debts. They also had a voluntary indentured servitude to pay off debts. Now, here's where they get their bad name from: human sacrifice. And they believe that thousands upon thousands, some people even speculate tens of thousands over the history of their empire for those couple of hundred years, they sacrificed humans. Mostly people that were soldiers that had been captured, or slaves that had been captured.
Now we just sacrifice school children.
Yes.
Well, that's true. Unfortunately, this is what we sacrifice. We talk about human sacrifice. We could stop this. We know we could stop this. We could take away the guns, but we refuse to take away the guns, so they keep shooting up the children. Okay.
Well,
that's the sacrifice you've made.
Yeah.
Human children for guns.
And we're also sacrificing them in the education system right now.
Yeah, that's not even here nor there. They haven't been teaching them anything since the 60s.
That's true. And then finally, Hernando Cortez came in 1521. And here's why I went over the god, because Montezuma thought that Cortez was the return of Quetzalcoatl. He thought that was him. When Cortez and his 400 men landed, he burned all his ships. He said, "We're not leaving." Burned all his ships. And then over the next 2 years, 3 million people of the empire died, not from the 400 people in the guns, from smallpox. Wiped out 50% of their population.
That's why they burnt the ships.
Yeah. And then the next 150.
And they spread the disease to everybody.
And then the next 100 plus years, 94% of the population of that empire was completely wiped out. There are today, last point on that, on the intro, is there are today 1.5 million people who still speak the Nahuatl language. So there's a lot of people that still exist from that empire.
Impressive.
Yeah, it is
Thank
impressive.
you for that tidbit. I did not know that.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the time to read.
How many million?
1.5 million.
Wow.
They're all in Mexico.
That's very impressive.
It is, isn't it? So I want to read the story now. She doesn't call it a fairy tale because some of this is probably true. Many experts think that some of this, even though I've never seen this or read it, many people thought Montezuma did these kinds of things because of his quest to try to find out something's bigger than me. What the heck is it? And that's what I love about this story, Lahab and Lisa. So let me read it to you. King Moctezuma, and I'm going to stop there and say that's really Montezuma. So if y'all don't mind, whenever this comes up, I'm just going to say Montezuma.
Yes, go ahead.
King Montezuma I wanted to know about Chico-Mostoc, the 7 caves, which his tradition had so often mentioned as the home of his ancestors. He summoned his prime minister, Tlacaelel, to prepare his best warriors. But Tlacaelel told him this was not an ordinary place that one conquered, but rather a special place to discover and learn from. I love that. He advised Montezuma to send wizards, sorcerers, and magicians to find this mysterious place. Montezuma then called for the royal historian, who explained, our forebears dwelt in that blissful, happy place called Aztlan, which means whiteness. In that place, there is a great hill in the midst of the waters, and it is called Cohuacan because its summit is twisted. Thus, it is Cohuacan, meaning twisted hill. In this hills were caves or grottos where our fathers and grandfathers lived for many years. The ancestors lived there in happiness and riches. In other places, this land is called the Seven Caves and lies to the north. However, after they abandoned that delightful place and came to the mainland, everything turned against them. The weeds began to bite, the stones became sharp and cut, and the fields were filled with thistles and spines. Since the royal historian corroborated the same story of his prime minister, Montezuma ordered that all the wizards and magicians who could be found in all of the provinces be brought before him. Laden with rich gifts and special attire, food and plants, 60 sorcerers set off to find the seven caves. They met with an evil spirit who changed them into their naguals, or animal spirits, birds, jaguars, wildcats, who took them to the land of their forebears. Upon reaching the shores of a large lake, they turned back into their human forms. There they found people living peacefully who spoke the same language as the visitors. They explained to these people that they were looking for Coatlicue, the mother of Huitzilopochtli, and Chacmaztoc, the seven caves from which their ancestors had set forth. They were led to an old man and welcomed them and asked who had sent them. When they said Montezuma and Tlacaelel, the old man asked who these people were. He did not know of them, nor of Montezuma. The old man asked, why is it that all of us here are still alive in the place they abandoned? Why is it that none of us have died? Where are your leaders now? The sorcerers answered and explained that they had brought gifts from the present leader, Montezuma, for Huitzilopochtli and his mother. The old man said, pick up what you have brought and follow me. They put the gifts on their back and followed the old man, who climbed the hill with ease. They went behind him, their feet sinking into the soft sand, walking with great difficulty and heaviness. They called to the old man, who was walking with such lightness that his feet did not seem to touch the ground. What is wrong with you, O Aztecs? He asked. What has made you so heavy? What do you eat in your land? We eat the foods that grow there, and we drink chocolate. The elder responded, such rich food and drink, my children, have made you heavy, and that makes it difficult for you to reach the place of your ancestors. Those foods will bring death. The wealth you have, we know nothing about. We live poorly and simply. Give me your loads and wait here. I shall go call to the mistresses of this land, the mother of Huitzilopochtli, so that you may see her. He picked up one of the bundles and carried it up the hill as if it were straw. Soon he returned for the others and carried them up with great ease. When all the presents brought by the Aztecs had been taken uphill, a woman of great age appeared, the ugliest and dirtiest old hag that one could possibly imagine. Her face was so black and covered with filth that she looked like something straight out of hell. Weeping bitterly, she said to the visitors, welcome, my sons. Know that since your God, my son Huitzilopochtli, departed from this place, I have been awaiting his return, weeping and mourning. Since that day, I have not washed my face, combed my hair, or changed my clothes. My sadness and mourning will last until he returns. It is true, my children, that you have been sent here by the leaders of the 7 barrios whom my son took away with him. The envoys lifted their eyes, And seeing this hideous and abominable woman, they were filled with fear. They humbled themselves before her and did reverence. O great and powerful lady, we neither saw nor spoke to the heads of the 7 groups. We were sent by your servant, Montezuma, and his minister, Tlacaelel, to visit you and seek out the place where our ancestors once lived. They commanded us to kiss your hands in their name. We wish you to know that Montezuma now rules over the great city of Tenochtitlan. He is not the first king, but the 5th. When they returned to Tenochtitlan, the magicians and the sorcerers took the gifts to Montezuma and told him, Lord, we've carried out your order and we have witnessed what you wish to know. We have seen that land called Aztlan and Culhuacan, where our fathers and grandfathers lived and from whence they left on their migration. And we have brought the things that grow and are bred there. Then they placed before the king many ears of corn, seed, and different kinds of flowers, tomatoes. Boy, did I say that from a Southern point of view. Not tomatoes, tomatoes and chilies.
It's okay, brother. That's okay.
Sorry.
Everybody has their roots somewhere. It's okay.
Foods and plants grown in that land, and the rough fiber mantles and breechcloths, and all things that had been sent by the people. They told Montezuma everything that had occurred with the mother of Huitzilopochtli and her old servant, and how they had seen this man change his age from youth to middle age to very old. They added that in that place, all the ancestors who had stayed there were still alive, and Coatlicue had complained bitterly about her son Huitzilopochtli, for whom she had waited so long. On speaking of such a land of happiness, Montezuma and Tlacaelel were moved and began crying bitterly. Remembering their ancestors, they became homesick, wistful at not being able to see the land of their origin. They wished dearly to return one day, once their human mission here would be fulfilled. And having thanked the magician envoys and ordering fine presents to be given to them for their work, they requested that these same sorcerers take the Maguey fiber mantles and breechcloths to the temple, where they should be placed upon Huitzilopochtli, since his mother had sent them to him. End of story.
Well, you know, it's a great story.
It really is.
It's a great story. And part of it is what really piqued my interest was the term that the unconscious is the land of our ancestors, which is exactly what it is. You know, it's everything we've forgotten, everything we're not conscious of anymore. That could be something that happened yesterday. That could be something that happened 200 years ago. Because they all give us insight into the world that we live in now. They all give us ideas about how we're living and where we're living and what we're doing. It's that rich, fertile land outside of our perception called the unconscious.
Yes.
And that, I thought, that was beautiful that they call it the ancestors, the home of the ancestors, which is beautiful. There's another thing in that is that they don't eat in the land of the ancestors. There is food, but they don't eat. And they're light on their feet and they move like it's a spirit world, right? So it's moving through the spirit world. And to be a spirit world, you cannot have any concerns of the day, which is our physical concerns, the concerns of the organism, what the organism needs. And this is how we know this is the spirit world. And that these people who come from the physical world, their feet are sinking into the spirit world. They're getting stuck. As they climb the mountain, they get stuck. Their feet are heavier and heavier, and it's breaking through the spirit world where it's making them very, very slow. Because they're not thinking that they're in the spirit world. They're denying their existence in the spirit world, trying to hang on to what? Trying to hang out to the idea that there's a real physical world. And that's bogging them down. And one of the reasons that Montezuma sends all these people. So what's interesting is at the beginning of the story, there's 60 magicians and sorcerers for 7 caves. Why 60 for 7 caves? What is the idea? What is the idea behind 60 magicians for 7 caves?
Not sure.
Interesting. Don't look at me. It hit me that something is wrong with this number. Now, the number 7 is the number of luck, of chance. But 60, I don't get. We'd have to look it up. But go on.
Ask an Aztec historian.
Yes, we have to ask Aztecs about their math.
I will look it up, sir.
What other stuff? Go ahead.
Can I comment on a couple things you just
Yeah,
said?
yeah.
I love when you brought up the home of his ancestors and the meaning of that. And I'm not making a direct link to this, but in a roundabout way, it says, Tlacaelel, this is the prime minister. He told Montezuma that this place that Montezuma wanted to find was not an ordinary place. It's not to be conquered, but it's a special place to discover and learn from. And in a roundabout way, it made me think of the collective unconscious. It made me think that this guy knows that there are great things to be learned and discovered by looking at the knowledge and understanding and wisdom and life of those who have lived before us. And it just made me think of the collective unconscious.
Well, this is a collective dream because you're going through the ancestors. Once you say ancestors, it's a collective dream. It's everybody who has come before us, not just in ancient times, but everybody who is connected to us in one way or another, by gene, by hook, by crook, by skin cell, who knows? But everybody we've come into contact with just by being this type of organism on this planet. That is the unconscious. That is the collective unconscious. That's what we carry, the ancestors. So that would be the collective unconscious.
Okay.
The place of the ancestors.
So it's indirectly related then. The other thing that I thought about when you brought it up was the fact that they were getting bogged down and carrying and they weren't looking at the other life. It reminded me of one of the most powerful scenes in a movie, I think Jeremy Irons was in it, called The Mission. If you ever get a chance to see it, it's a very powerful movie. I'm not talking about the religious and church part of it, just the spiritual aspect of it. And they were climbing up the hill and Robert De Niro kept sliding back down because he had a rope. He and the soldiers had ropes and were carrying all their armor up the hill and they kept sliding down. And the natives there were just laughing at him.
Ooh.
And they, after they did that a couple of times, the native guy went down to help him and he pulled out his knife and he cut the rope off.
Ooh.
He cut the ropes off and then they could go up the hill. And the natives that were there in South America were just delighted that they finally got it. You can't carry all that crap with you if you want to go into another world. If you want to seek something that you've never seen before, let go of that stuff. And it made me think of that scene from that movie, which was first time I saw it, that scene made me cry. It was that powerful. And Robert De Niro just broke down in tears.
Okay. I agree. Okay. I don't know what I agree to. I disagree. I agree to disagree. Okay. All right. Let's go back to idea. So I think what Eric is trying to say is that to go into the spirit world, you must be free of the things that you hold on to in this world. You can't move into the spirit world still holding on to. It can be anything from clothes to love to heartache to disaster to family to friend to painting to fortune. Doesn't matter what it is, you cannot go. You will
So
always
you
be
do
stuck.
agree.
Yes, and that place, actually, we've talked about it quite often, is called limbo. It's the place where it's in between the spirit world and this world. It's limbo because it's the way station.
Mm.
It's either you get busy living or you get busy dying. There is no in between. Being caught in limbo is just being lost in the unconscious.
Yeah, I think what both you and Eric are describing are earthbound, what become burdens,
Mhm.
desires,
Mm,
requirements, needs that we think we are bound to for value of rich foods, having hunger, and clothing, or
mm,
whatever they valued, they brought
mm,
with them, they thought that were gifts, were of no importance in the other realm. And
mm. Yes. But you still had to sacrifice something from this world. So that was your sacrifice. Whether it meant anything or not does not matter. You have to sacrifice everything that you think is important, that you think are your riches. That's what you have to sacrifice in this world. So you have to say, take everything I own, take my children, take my. You have to give up everything to have an audience with the spirit world. Otherwise, you are stuck in limbo because you're not really ready to face the spirit world. To face the spirit world, you have to be able to let go of everything. And I'm not talking about that lousy beer under your bed. I am talking about everything. The mistress, the six-figure bank account that you hold, whatever it is that you prize most, that's what you have to give up. And I know a lot of people on Wall Street right now just so sign me up, sign me up. And I would say to them, it's only a matter of time, son. Only a matter of time. Okay. So back to Montezuma. And Montezuma was trying to do what? What was he trying to do, Eric?
He was trying to connect with his ancestors, with that
Yes.
world. He was trying to unite his physical world with theirs, so he could become a part of it.
Yes. He wanted to become immortal.
Yes.
Yes. So he was told to fuck off in a very nice and pleasant way. Montezuma learned you cannot have what you want to have. This was a warning to him. This was a warning to Montezuma. So if you want to read, Eric, you want to read the last paragraph.
The last paragraph. Okay,
One day
I will.
returned, paragraph 200. One day returned.
Okay. On speaking of such a land of happiness, Montezuma and Tlacaelel were moved and began crying
No.
bitterly.
Paragraph 200.
Oh, 200. Okay. I'm
Paragraph
sorry.
200, yes.
When they returned to Tenochtitlan, the magicians and the sorcerers took the gifts to Montezuma and told him, Lord, we have carried out your order and we have witnessed that which you wished to know.
Stop. We have witnessed that which you wish to know. I don't have it transcribed anywhere. I witnessed, right? You cannot bring anything back with you like a tape recording, a video, a picture. No. I witnessed. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Okay. We have seen that land called Aztlan and Colhuacan, where our fathers and grandfathers lived and from whence they left on their migration.
So stop right there. That's where death occurs. The migration. Grandfathers lived from whence they left on their migration.
Mm-hmm.
They're gone. Migration, they moved on into the underworld, into the spirit world. Remember, we're always going back into this other world. And this other world is providing us with great gifts. So it's symbolized in gold and food and whatever was missing in that day or period. Wine or fresh water or whatever it was, it gave in plenty. If you needed emeralds, if you needed diamonds, if you needed crystals, it was there. It was perfect. Keep reading, Eric.
And we have brought the things that grow and are bred there. They then place before the king many ears of corn seed and different kinds of flowers, tomatoes, and chilies, foods and plants grown in that land, and the rough fiber mantles and breechcloths, and all the things that had been sent by the people of Aztlan, Colhuacan.
So what they revealed to them is agriculture, seeds. They planted seeds of discovery, seeds that would give them food, yellow corn, peppers, tomatoes. So those seeds, the ingenuity of the seed, I gave you idea, now go and do it. And suddenly I've discovered seed, and suddenly I have all this wealth that I did not have because I had to go into the underworld, right? But these are not gifts from the underworld. This is what I witnessed, what I became conscious of. The only thing you could take back from the underworld and in fairy tales and from the dream is only what you are conscious of. You see a symbol, you see a picture, you see a face, you think you understand a story. The unconscious has given you treasure. So I have to witness. I can't carry it out. I can't carry seeds out. I can't carry corn. They didn't carry literal corn or peppers or tomatoes, or they didn't. But they carried the knowledge of how to create. So this fine line between the spirit world and between what we call our world, our physical structured world, is that whatever we have lost resides in that world. And that it's a two-way relationship. There is a reason they let us cross over. That means they're crossing over too. Don't ask me the science, but all we have to do is look at quantum mechanics and entanglement theory.
Which states, as you very well know, that a piece of mass, or I'll say a wavelength, can exist in more than one place at the same time.
Correct. And there is our spirit world. So let's go back to this, because this is very interesting. Because the Aztecs and the stars are very well documented. So let's try to understand how these Aztecs, they're like an ancient culture, knew what they knew. Keep reading, Eric.
Okay. They told Montezuma everything that had occurred with the mother of Huitzilopochtli and with her old servant, and how they had seen this man, I love this, how they had seen this man change his age from youth to middle age to very old.
Okay, stop there. That is called the self. That is the definition of what Jung would call the self. You see him in many different ways, but he is one. You see him when he's young, you see him when he's old, when he's... It doesn't matter if you see him in any gender. He is one. That is self. This is the definition of the self. Because their spirit world is their philosophical world. The fairy tale is part of the philosophy of existence, what we believe and how we believe we exist. It's not a fairy tale to them. This is the story of their existence.
Yes, that's
Yes.
well said.
Yes. So this is a philosophy of being, of creation.
Yes.
Within that philosophy of creation, there are those things that are created that Jung would pick up on many decades and thousands of years later. But this existed thousands of years before he would like have an inkling of what he would be talking about. He would cite these people as the discoverers of what we know now.
So you can see my fascination. I know they got a lot of things wrong. I know Montezuma did a lot of
We
narcissism.
don't care about that.
I know, I don't either.
We don't care about what they got wrong.
I
What
don't.
we care about is the treasure that we have in front of us.
Yes.
Yes.
But
So
a lot
keep
of people
reading.
get
Keep
caught up
reading.
in that.
Keep reading.
This is why I said earlier that I see a lot of Jungian thought.
Keep
in
reading.
here.
Keep reading.
They added that in that place, all the ancestors who had stayed there were still alive.
Mhm. Keep going.
And Coatlicue had complained bitterly about her son, Huitzilopochtli, for whom she had waited so long.
Mhm.
Keep reading.
Keep reading.
On speaking of such a land of happiness, Montezuma and Tlacaelel were moved and began crying bitterly. Remembering their ancestors, they became homesick, wistful at not being able to see the land of their origin.
Okay,
They
stop
wished-
there. Stop there.
Yeah.
Stop there.
Yeah, I figured
Okay.
you stop
This
there.
this is beautiful, right? Lisa, what do you think?
Is this an inference to reincarnation?
On speaking,
Or-
yes. On speaking of such a land of happiness, he says.
Mhm.
Montezuma and Tlacaelel were moved and began crying bitterly. Oh, I am so moved. Yeah, this is so they go on, right? And they go on, and it's like this is the land of our origin. So we're remembering our ancestors. There's these different rituals around the world where they cry over the dead on the Day of the Dead. So I remember in Iraq, there was a day where they basically cried the entire day. They yelled and screamed, and it was like a ritual. You would go all the way to the cemetery and you visit all the relatives and you say something, and the women would cry and make you cry because those screams are eternal. They mess with your innards. So these are ancient rituals of crying for the dead, of being in that wake. But they're rituals of respect and of definition of boundaries between life and death. Very important during life that we know our boundary with death, and it must be vice versa. that the dead know they're dead. No, we're only speculating. But this is what.
But it's a speculation, Dr. Lahab, that is intuitive in peoples all over the world and for many, many centuries and thousands of years.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Something is weird. It's very strange.
I think that makes it more than speculation.
Yes, but they wish dearly to return one day once their human mission here would be fulfilled. After having thanked the magician, envoys, and ordering fine presents to be given to them for their work, they requested that these same sorcerers take the magu fiber and mantles and breechcloth to the temple where they should be placed. So these things are things to worship, so the things that have something sacred about them. And worship is not about just like standing stupid in front of something. The idea of worship is to look deeper within that which you believe. I don't know how they lost their way, but worship became like bowing your head 5 times. But it's actually looking within. It's finding that which is within. It's philosophical. They dumbed it down for nodding. It's seeing what you can't see. It's respecting that which you cannot hear, touch, or taste. The self that exists within us, outside of us, and still transcendent of us. And this is what he goes to seek. What he gets is something very different. He gets a different answer. And the answer is, here are the seeds of life. Why should I make it easy for you, dumbass? Figure it out. Here are seeds of life. The self is replicating life.
I see. That's interesting. I'm seeing this in a bigger picture now, in a storyline of a person, a human who was just curious about some folklore and just wanted to know a little bit about what it used to be and why was it meaningful. But what he learns about it is he learns a different aspect of himself or self that he didn't know that existed. And now he has an awareness, and also knowing that he cannot cross to that realm. There's just a little bit more completion of himself in that regard. Interesting.
It very likely might have changed him.
100%. It's a transformational moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a transformational moment because you get this awareness that you did not have before. It just like kind of washed over you. It's like,
yeah. And he has a homecoming. He feels like he's home again, homesickness. So he knows he feels more grounded or within himself.
Weeping is consciousness, by the way. It's a symbol of consciousness. Why do we weep? We weep because we realize something we hadn't realized.
And then here, years later, here comes this guy dressed in silver and silver hats and breastplates and guns. And I mean, and he oh my gosh, I've reached the next level. Here comes Quetzalcoatl. Here comes my God.
We're moved and began crying bitterly. Our consciousness was awakened in a way that it forced great emotion from us. Crying bitterly is with great emotion. You know, only in the 20th century does it become whining. Crying bitterly is great emotion.
Comes from the core.
Yes, so we don't understand it. That's why when we look at kids who are crying bitterly, we don't get it because we're disconnected from our instinctual side. So we think it's whining because our left hemisphere is saying, why are they doing that? That seems weird. Instead of saying, what are they trying to say? We are reminded of the snow white region of the fairy tale, the whitish silver light of the kingdom of the moon in the Lady of the Moon. The temporal spatula of foreign land is steeped in a strangely transfigured, unnatural light representing a state of unconscious clairvoyance in the Norwegian fairy tale. The princesses of Whiteland, the magical realm, is called simply Whiteland, and the hero reaches this kingdom in a roller coaster ride on a boat over the ocean. In the legend of Montezuma, the magical kingdom is known as the place of origin of the people where their ancestors lived in a timeless state. It is the land of eternal youth, for in climbing the hill, Kalatuan continually renewed life, reconnecting back to the land of the ancestor, means connecting to the unconscious where time, space are relativized, and the primordial images are eternally lived, alive. Therefore, the reconnection and preservation of the contact with the ancestral spirits and animals is an integral part in many primitive myths. Young writes, this is a quote. This is on page 82 of Archetypal Symbols and Fairytales. The symbols of the rites of renewal, if taken seriously, points far beyond the mere archaic and infantile to man's innate psychic disposition, our true essence, which is the result and deposit of all ancestral life right down to the animal level. So right down to the instinctual parts of our existence and our fight for existence, all the way into the much more spiritual, the much more enlightened, the much more conscious part. Hence, the ancestors and animal symbolism, because we see consciousness in the animals. We see consciousness in the deer who looks innocent. We see consciousness in the wolf that looks resigned to a task. We see consciousness in a begging dog who's asking for a snack in a sneaky way. We see consciousness. We see consciousness in the cat that's walking all the way around us and staring. We see consciousness. We project behavior onto that consciousness. So what he's saying is there's very deep level of instinctual connection. And there's a very high level of spiritual connection.
That's a really good point, Dr. Lahab, because I've always not quite understood why people are so down on predatory animals in this world, because we see their level of consciousness, but there's also an innocence there within
But we're
them.
disconnected from our side. We're
Thank you.
disconnected from within, that we have that side.
And we
The
project.
predatory is us as much as we are empathic, loving, and gentle. We are predators.
Yes.
The only way we've survived this far and the way we have inflicted damage on this planet is only by predator. That we have nothing competing with us. We have left no animal competing with us. That's only a predator does that. And only after we've wiped them out do we say we feel bad for them. Because that is of the victor bemoaning the vanquished because he wants to vanquish them again. It's not because he misses them. He misses the balance. He misses that fight because that fight gave balance. Without that fight, we lose balance. And what happens? Predators start tracking each other. So you have manhunters now because animals are not good enough.
That's good. I like that.
Because that's where we see more psychopathic behavior. Because
Manhunter.
we have decimated that which we thought. Now we have to create new enemies. But who can create better enemies than we can? We are each other's enemies now. So we destroy entire nations, we destroy entire arsenals, we destroy entire people. We call them terrorists, we call them antagonists, we call them invaders, we call them different. Yellow, brown, black. We have all kinds of names for them to wipe them out.
That's why it makes me think about, it drives me crazy at this polarization that so many people have about we're either born good or we're born evil. Well, how about we're born with both? You know, we're not
that
born
is true,
good.
but we are also born with a conscience.
Well, yeah,
Those who have been disconnected from conscience, because we no longer need the things that we are born to be evil or good for. We don't need to kill to feed. So we have evolved to a certain state. And if you are waking up in a state of evil, then there's a problem.
well, sure. I'm just saying that we're born with the capacity for both.
Oh, 100%, because we have a lot of sociopaths out there. So I don't disagree with you one bit, brother. They're all over the place. They have all kinds of names, they have all kinds of faces, and they have all kinds of smiles. And they all know who they are. So the number one dealers in plastic and the number one investors in plastics are the same. JP Morgan Chase and Barclays, the oldest two banks, they're invested in destruction. But if you ask them, they're making money for the shareholders. And the shareholders don't give a fuck about the planet. This is all about power. What does Montezuma try to understand? Understands that power on one plane is limited. You must understand power on several different planes. And that you have to have respect for that power on that plane. When you lose respect for power and you think that you own all the power, that's where destruction rides upon your head.
Mm-hmm.
They call it hubris. I call it the God of knowing that you're full of shit. But anyway, Young says, it is true that without the qualities of autonomy and autarky, there would be no consciousness at all. Yet these qualities also spell danger of isolation and stagnation. Since by splitting off the unconscious, they bring about an unbearable alienation from instincts. Loss of instincts is the source of endless error and confusion. When your God looks green and is made of paper, or it is called the Bitcoin, where do you think Bitcoin came from? It's from the golden calf. It's all the same, people. You have lost your way. And when you have lost your way, you will bleed Mother Earth until it gets rid of you. So, Fascinating, fascinating Montezuma.
Really was.
Lisa, how are you feeling today?
Good. Hi.
Mhm.
I'm just reading that paragraph over again on my own here. It's a lot of concepts.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Can I make a quick point, Lahab? Lawson?
Yes, I want you to read paragraph 196 before you make point.
Okay.
Just read the first 4 or 5 lines.
196.
Paragraph 196 on page 8.
Gotcha. They were led to an old man who welcomed them and asked who had sent them. When they said Montezuma and Tlacaelel, the old man asked who these people were. He did not know of them, nor of Montezuma. The old man asked, why is it that all of us here are still alive in the place they abandoned? Why is it that none of us have died? Who are your leaders now? The
So, you
sorcerers
stop
answered.
right there. You just
Okay,
stop right
gotcha.
there. That's beautiful. But I am only conscious of what I know. You are telling me something I doesn't exist for me. How do you expect me to be conscious of that? What are you talking about? Who are these people?
This is a huge discussion of the self, of
Mm.
of the 12 ways we speak to ourselves, as you said. Those combinations of layers of consciousness, unconsciousness, what is known and unknown.
60 sorcerers to enter 70 caves.
Uh-huh.
So it's 60 sorcerers for each freaking cave. They have to all enter the cave until one of them understands what happened in the cave. Because there's 60 ways of they're going to be able to figure out what has happened in the cave. But there's only one story that is relatable to all. Remember, when we bring back a story from the unconscious to the conscious, we have to make it a symbol. So we have to take these 60 differentiating stories of what I witnessed and create one symbol around it. What was the symbol, Eric? What was the symbol?
The symbol of
Of
what?
the lake. What was the symbol of the lake?
It was the eagle eating the snake.
The eagle eating the snake. The snake represents the underworld. The eagle represents the world from above. It's not the eating, it's the integration of the eagle and the snake.
That's a good point.
Not a destruction,
No,
but and yeah,
it's a
integration.
transformational integration
Mhm.
where I understand the world beneath by integrating. And this is how we've always thought of things in the world. This is how we've treated things that we eat. He eat a heart of the bull. I want to be as strong as the bull. Okay, dumbass. But these are how we psychologically have moved through the world.
That's what I loved about Jung saying that about the shadow, when he said, you know, we shouldn't deal with the shadow with a bunch of wonderful lights and prayers. He said you got to make the shadow conscious.
With the shadow is dangerous.
Well, yeah, it's dangerous.
The shadow holds all those ancient instincts, all those instincts that says, gut him, hang him, and then let him think about it. That instinct, not the instinct of, oh, listen to his conversation and then respond to him.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's why it's not an instant process.
The shadow has many depths to it, like the ego does. The ego can be highly, highly inflamed. and can revolve around the world that I only exist and I am the source of all these other people's enjoyment. You basically exist within a parameter that's so tiny it's hard to see, but you exist in that mindset. And you're willing to pay people to stick around to say, oh, yes, you're brilliant. Or you want to terrify people because you have power. And you make them close to you and they're jumpy at the same time, because that reconditions your feeling of being powerful against those who are not. That is shadow. That is depth of shadow fucking with you. And you not being aware of it. That is depth of shadow. And shadow is very, very dangerous because it seeped into popular culture as a joke. It seeped into popular culture as something to play with. It's not a fucking playful thing. As Trump has proven, it is not playful. It is destructive, it is demeaning, and it's tormenting. And you want more because it knows what you're lacking. We do not need it to invade our culture. It is taking us to the edge. And I mean to the edge. People are not becoming aware that something evil is out there, something that's very destructive. They take it lightly. Oh, this is my politics. This is what I believe. No. This is danger. This is shadow. And we've been talking about shadow and fairy tale. Shadow is always innocent until you find all the blood that's been hiding underneath its fingernails. Always innocent. What was that, Lisa?
That was creepy.
Yes, I was being creepy about shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should know it's creepy. So this is not a fun thing to fuck around with. I think people have been taking it too lightly. I really do. I think people have dismissed the idea that there is deep evil. I think Eric brought it up a couple of times. And I'd like to acknowledge him. I must have missed it, but he brought it up. He's like, there's real evil. The shadow has access to it. Does not mean it's going to go there.
Thank you. I love that. Say that again for me, just for me.
Well, for you.
For me.
It has access, but it's not going to go there unless somebody has smacked it enough times and taken it there. Then it not only has access, but then it has a desire. It's been humiliated.
Well said, Lahab. Thank you.
But the fairy tale itself is a positive fairy tale. Montezuma and his gods are very rewarding towards Montezuma. But he doesn't listen to them. He misses the point. He misses the symbol of the self that is replicating, that he needs to be careful of not knowing who is God.
I just respect him, and I agree with you 100%. I just respect him trying and making it a priority. And yeah, he missed it. He missed the ultimate point, but it wasn't because, I mean, at least he was at least his head wasn't up as you know what. He was trying to think beyond himself, is what I'm trying to
No,
say.
no, but he did not get the message that the self has multiple forms
Understood.
and that you might mistaken it for a God. That's what he missed. And that's how he got wiped out. He didn't listen to his own story. Within your own story is also a paragraph about your demise. Because nobody knows you like you. That's the fairy tale. Did I share with everybody today? I got very excited. I wanted to share with all of you. My client, we will call him John. Today sent in a dream. And I want to read this very short. There exists a substance that is beneficial to anything it is applied to. It exists in exact proportion to the land. I am looking at a piece of property and want to apply this substance to it. There are others who want to use it for their own benefit. I go to a different piece of property and encounter the same scenario. I want to apply this magical substance to the land, and others want to use it to benefit themselves. This substance is extracted from the land. It only seems right to be put back where it properly belongs. He associated that with Jamp. I thought that was beautiful. With that, I think we have covered many interesting ideas. We did not get to Lisa's fairy tale. So next week, Lisa, did you want to do something from the upper and the underworld? The upper and the underworld. The upper
Yeah.
world and the underworld.
It's a
Okay.
beautiful story.
Okay. So next week, this week, we finished with the mountain and Montezuma. With Lisa. Lisa, do you want to sign off in any way you like?
I'd just like to thank you and thank the audience for joining us today on our journeys through the mountain.